Good afternoon, friends, and a very warm welcome to this 58th in the series webinar on a very important topic today. Friends, the topic for today's discussion is reforms in Indian labor laws, the Industrial Relations Code. Friends, this is being brought to you by Inclusive Human Resource Development Initiative, or IHRDI. This is the 58th in the series webinar on as many as Sundays since last 1 year. Friends, when we are talking about the labor laws, I would like you to go back to the time when industrial revolution started in this world, in the Western Europe and American side, wherein earlier prior to that. The industry, we cannot call it industry. It was all about cottage and handicraft kind of, wherein the system was more of like barter system, wherein the farmers produced something, and then the other people who were artisans and all, they produced clothes on handmade machines, or kargas, which we call them in India. So that was just for self sufficiency purposes, and it was used as barter. But later on, when industrial revolution took place, the meaning thereby that now everything was undertaken by machines, big factories and big industries started operating, and then people, these factories generally were outside of the cities and in remote areas. People from one place to the other, they started migrating therein. So all these people, all these labor who migrated at various levels, they started working. Earlier they worked only for themselves. Now they started working for the owners. So then employer employee relationship started at that point of time. And then with this, slowly the relations between the two parties, the employer and the employees, started developing. Initially, when it all started, the employer, who was the capitalist, considered to be very supreme, because he had spent the money, he had put in the capital, and because of that, it was sort of obligatory to be on the part of the employees or the labor to do whatever the employer thinks fit or deems fit. So meaning thereby that there was no facilities, there was no benefits, and there were no rights and rules, and there were no rules by which the relationship between the two parties were governed. But over a period of time, when the labor organized itself into forces, like trade unions came up, and somehow they started being organized and started talking about their own rights. And slowly but steadily, and various thinkers also came around. During that time period, I remember, because the earlier time period, it was the time when, management thinkers like F.W. Taylor, Luther Gulick and Urvik, Chester Bernard, all these people came around. But later on, when when the trade union started getting organized, labor started striking work, and then the malik or the employer started having some kind of problem, in that sense that if the work is struck, then there is no production, there is no manufacturing, and there is over a loss to the unit. And this loss was a direct loss to the capitalist or to the employer. So they started listening to what the labor said, and then the advent of management thinkers like George Elton Mayo, then Frederick Herzberg, Mary Parker Follett. These people helped at that time, and then we moved from the scientific management or to the industrial relation part to the human resources management. So that is how the story has taken shape. Over a period of time, they started getting benefits, and in terms of number of hours, in terms of working conditions, in terms of safety, in terms of social security also. And today, when we talk about today, this has all taken a good shape. And over a period of time now, the relationship between the employer and employee, they have been laid down, and they have been documented, and they have been the employer knows what the rights the employee has, and similarly vice versa is also true. So that is how it has governed in India also. Now coming back to India, during the British time when it started, though the industry was very less at that point of time, but there was laws and rules which started governing the relationship between both the parties. Now, when we are talking about today's time, apart from let's say till 2019, there we can say that the labor laws in Indian Constitution is in the concurrent list, meaning thereby that both the central government as well as the state governments have the right to come up with laws in terms of the labor part. But what has happened over a period of time, that there are multiple laws and rules which are happening. There are some central government rules, and there are number and multiple of state government rules, wherein every state government may have its own different rules to manage the relationship between the employer and the employee. So in the year 2019 or so, the government of India started thinking in this regard, that why not consolidate all these laws and rules which were therein in terms of labor into some consolidated structure, and then this should be sort of uniform throughout the country. So they came out with the four codes which are termed as the four labor codes. And what it has actually done is that it has subsumed 29 central laws and a number of state laws into one, and these are known as the codes of the labor as such, if we talk about today. So this all started in 2019, and if I just pronounce these four labor codes, they are code on wages. This became an act in the year 2019. Then there is the industrial relations code. This is the second code. The third code is the occupational safety, health, and the working conditions code. Then the last is the code on social security. Incidentally, in the year 2019, the parliament gave approval to the wages code, which became a law in the year 2019. However, the other three codes, that is on industrial relations, occupational safety, and the lastly on social security, they could not be taken up by the parliament, and it was referred to a committee, and then it was passed, and it is just passed again in the year 2021 only. So now all these have become laws, but only thing is that the implementation has still not been done. So what was the purpose to bring about such changes in the laws? The idea which the government of India talked about was to simplify, modernize, and restructure the current laws. So that was the aim, and improve upon the ease of doing business. Friends, as you know, that when we talk about the ease of doing business, it talks about various aspects. There are aspects like ease of doing business, ease of starting business, and which is happening worldwide, in the sense that the index is happening worldwide, and it goes on, and it is a sort of a ready reckoner for those multinational corporations and those companies which would like to invest in any other country. So if they see that what is the ease of doing business, that means if they invest their money in such country, so then they would be able to get it rolled very quickly. And even if they would like to quit, then also it is a simple and a easy affair which is therein. So, in Indian setup, we were at 130 position out of 180 countries in ease of doing business. However, the last 1.5 years, we have jumped from 130 to now around 100 into ease of doing business. So this was a very constant demand, not only by the Indian industries, but by the multinational corporations to have a reform in the labor laws. When, if you remember, we had the first reforms coming up during 1990s, when Dr. P.V. Narasimha Rao and the team of Dr. Manmohan Singh came around. So they were termed as liberalization, privatization, and globalization. And along with many other laws reforms came around. So this was considered to be the first generation reforms. So labor reforms, there was after 1990s. It was always the demand of the Indian industries, and along with Indian industries, the multinational corporations, to come up with the second generation reforms. And one of the second generation reforms was the labor reforms in India, meaning thereby that they should be able to hire people of their own choice, and if the people are not working as per them, they should have powers accordingly. But the multiple governments have somehow they didn't take the bait, because labor is a very well organized lobby, and they have lot of there are political parties which goes into the labor aspect only, and their political maybe careers and everything, uh, they are sort of hampered, and they are at risk if something of this sort taken by. But somehow over the last 2-3 years, such kind of initiatives have been taken, rightly or wrongly. But this was a demand of both Indian industries and as well as the multinational corporations. There, idea is, main aim is to broaden the safety, broaden the scope of the coverage, rights, and protection, and reducing multiplicity in the definition and increasing digitization. And what the government says that once we bring about these laws, we are not any kind of compromising the law rights, the laws, and the benefits of the employees, but rather we are increasing those benefits. Only we are doing is that we are not changing the laws in a wholesale. No, the government says it has not been done. What we have done is that we have just codified it to 4 forms so that it becomes easier for both the employees and the employer also to work and function at a single point. And over a period of time, this has increased the scope of the various benefits that has been given to the labor. And the now the labor will it will not be kind of only on papers. The labor will get their due, and it will be very good for both the Indian businessmen also and those multinational corporations who want to come inside the country. So this will give a free way to the multinational corporations to enter the country, to bring about capital, and to then with capital, the industrialization will further take place, and this will lead to employment generation. And friends, at the end of the day, employment generation is the only way to increase the GDP and to get the foreign exchange in the country, the FDI, foreign direct investment in this country. So that was the major theme and aim which they have worked. So when we just to give you a little glimpse of these 4 codes. See, the wages code talk about the minimum wages, and it also talks about the statutory bonus and the deductions, and it talks about equal remuneration for all. The industrial relation code talks about the employee working condition. It talks about industrial disputes. It talks about collective bargains. The third, occupational safety, health, and working conditions code talks about the legal provision for factories, mines, plantations, and the contract labor, etc. The code on social security talks about and subsumes various welfare measures which were provided to the employees during all this, like retirement benefits, the provident fund, the gratuity, the old age, the disability, and other benefits are into this. Friends, keep in mind that over a period of time, we had certain leaders who were trade unionists, but they became very, very, very strong. I am reminded of Mr. Dattare Samant, who was a trade union leader in Mumbai, and you would remember those infamous strike that took place for 1 year. And rather, what had happened during that time period, that because of that strike, a number of textile mills, they were closed, and many people then came on the road because of that strike. I am not going into the merits why that strike went in, but the result was this. Then there was a strike in Maruti, I think 3-4 years back, which had which went on to that point that even they were willing to close down the factory. So this aggressive trade unions, aggressive strikes, it makes the though at one point of time it may make the person kneel, the capitalist kneel in front of the labor class, but I think it is not in good taste, and it is not beneficial for anybody, because if the factory is not working, industry is not working, at the end of the day, from wherein, I mean, it is a great loss, economic loss to the entire nation, to the entire workers, and to the all the stakeholders. The rights and duties, yes, they are required, but aggressiveness in terms of trade unionism and all, somehow, I don't know how the panelists will talk about this, but somehow it is not good for the economy. Now, just to, I'm giving you a parallel way. In Japan also, they have, the rights given to the employees, and you will be very surprised to know that in Japan, even though they do not have a government type service that we have in India, wherein somebody, he joins a service at some age, maybe 20-25 years, and retires at an age of 58 to 60 years, putting in 30-35 years. In Japan, they have less of the government service, but those people who join even the private service, even in industries and all, they retire and from the same industry, same company over a period of time, because they are not willing to change generally. And even if they have to strike, they will not strike the work at all. They will not close the work. They will not say Jindabad, Murdabad. If they have to strike, and if they want to show to their employer that we are not happy with you, they have various methods of telling them that we are not happy. One method is that they'll put a black ribbon on their collar or maybe on their sleeve, and they tell them that, and they'll keep on working. This is one way. Other way is that if they are manufacturing, let's say the output is 100 units a day, they will increase the output to 120, 150. The idea is that, okay, now your inventory will go up because you have to sell 120, 150. So they will rather in contrast, rather than to strike the work, to halt the machinery, they will increase the work. That is one. Thirdly, what they do is, let's say they are into a manufacturing of footwear, so they start manufacturing 1 foot. Let's say number 7, foot number 7 has left and a right foot, they start manufacturing only the left foot. So because this, there also the damage will be done, though manufacturing will not be closed, but the damage will be done to the capitalist or to the employer. So they have also different forms and ways of how to show their resentment. But in our part, how we have gone by is that we have we have struck work, some factories are closed, so both ways it is not good as such. So friends, speaking on this, and this is a gentle overview that I wanted to give on this. So it's a very interesting topic, interesting subject, and to deal with such a subject, we have two very eminent panelists today who have seen it all and who are a part of both the industrial relation part, and who have taken it forward from there. Dr. Mohammad Suleiman and Mr. Bhushan Bhatia. Uh, Dr. Mohammad, just a brief introduction. Dr. Mohammad Suleiman is a retired HR head from Malabar Cements Limited, Kochi, Kerala. He put in more than 33 years of service in the industry, and has risen to ranks from the start level and to heading the HR part. And he is also an academician in his own right, having completed the post-graduation degrees, then in business administration also, he did law also, and then he completed his doctorate degree also. So many qualifications he did alongside with his the job that he was doing. And today he is a he's a writer. He's a freelance faculty. He is a guest faculty for various institutions, for various engineering and MBA colleges, and he is writing in the specialization of HR issues. So friends, please welcome Dr. Mohammad Suleiman, and I'm sure he'll bring about a lot of insights into the psyche, and being a part of negotiations, and a part of trade unionism, and having seen it all. So welcome, Dr. Saab, and it is great to have you on the panel today. Friends, the second panelist of the day is Mr. Bhushan Bhatia. Bhatia Saab has retired as a senior officer from Punjab National Bank after putting in more than 35 years of service, and presently he is a practicing advocate in Punjab and Haryana High Court. And during his stint in Punjab National Bank, he has been in various positions. He has seen the best of Indian postings, and he has seen the overseas postings also. Plus, he has remained engaged into various functioning of banking, and he's seen because banking trade unionism also is a very well organized officers associations also. So he has seen it all with his own eyes. After retirement, he is into the practicing of law, and apart from that, he's a philanthropist and a social activist and a worker in his own right. So welcome, Bhatia Saab, and I'm sure the kind of panel that we have today, it will be very interesting to note on all these aspects. So friends, first I request Dr. Mohammad Suleiman to take over from here, and to speak about the Industrial Relations Code, and then further the matter will be taken up by Mr. Bhushan Bhatia. Suleiman Saab, the podium is all yours now. Dr. Saab, please, yeah, now it's...
Yeah. Audible? Good.
Yeah, it's visible, Dr. Sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Industrial relations. Can I start, sir? Can I
Yes, Dr. Sir,
start, sir?
please.
Yes, sir. The industrial
Please start,
relations
Dr. Sir.
code. Yes, sir.
Yeah,
I'm.
it's visible, Dr. Sir. Please start. Yeah.
Okay, okay, sir. Okay. Industrial Relations Code 2020. So already Dr. Chadha has given an outline about the situation and what compelled the government of India to initiate and minimize the repealing so many acts already in existence. More than 140 acts were in existence for the last 90 years. It was curtailed into four industrial codes. So it is first one is already Dr. Chadha has explained about code of wages and occupational safety and working conditions code, industrial relations code, and code on social security 2019. So I am given to explain what are the implications of industrial relations code, what prompted the government to initiate such an action to reduce to repeal the major acts like Industrial Dispute Act, Trade Unions Act, and Industrial Standing Orders Act into an IR code. So you are very well aware that the industrial relations part, there were a number of strikes and lockouts in India, and it has totally affected the mass industrialization and industrial growth, and it leads to unemployment and everything. Now, still the working conditions of the industrial worker is not good. Only big companies, Navaratna companies are providing good salary, working good working conditions, and implementing welfare amenities and everything. But other part, there is a private industries. Big companies like Tata, Birla, and Ambani, they are giving a lot of. They are having number of establishment in all states, and they are having number of establishment in other countries also. But even after, still the working condition in India is poor and compared with the other countries like US and Britain and France. The present circumstances, the government of India already initiated the mass industrialization after 1991, which was liberalization policy was first time introduced in India. After that, there were so many changes. So changes is a very important thing. It has happened from time to time. And multinational companies entered in India and they have started establishments. And work culture also totally been changed. So under the present circumstances, the government of India thought that many acts were old acts like Trade Union Act 1926. It was created almost century back. And Industry Dispute Act already, it is also 70 years, 75 years already on the run. And Industry Employment Standing Orders Act also, they are one of the oldest acts. So these three acts were joined together, and the government of India has introduced IR code, new IR code in place of the three acts. After the introduction, there were a lot of resistance from the trade unions because Trade Union Act 1926 had given immunity to the trade union leaders and they are enjoying the benefits. Now, after the introduction of the IR code, they are going to lose the bargaining power and the immunity already enjoyed by them. So this is one aspect. In other aspect, in Industrial Dispute Act 1947, there are number of authorities to settle the industrial dispute. It has introduced many number of statutory authorities like Works Committee, conciliation officers, Board of Conciliation, Courts of Inquiry, Labor Courts, Industrial Tribunals, and National Tribunals. After the introduction of the IR code, they are going to abolish the Board of Conciliation Officers and Board of Conciliation and Courts of Inquiry also. That means Labor Court, they will abolish the Labor Court. Actually, it is teaching effect on this uh, industrial piece because Labor Court, when you compare with the dealing with the industrial dispute, labor court is a court created by the statutes and it is having more powers. So that is why the most of the workers are approaching labor court instead of industrial tribunal. Industrial tribunal consisting also a judge, but even after the labor court will expedite the industrial dispute and settle the matter very fast, and they can prefer an appeal in the high court. So that opportunity was there. Whereas in industrial tribunal, the person appointed as to holding the charge of tribunal, he will postpone the case, so it will take years. So there may be a delay in that to settle the industrial disputes. Now the industrial court allowed the abolition of labor court and courts of inquiry, board of conciliation, and conciliation officers. Only labor officer will be there, and all other officers will be repealed. So this is a far-reaching impact on this code. In another case, Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946, IESO Act is called. Now that also repealed, and it is incorporated to IR code. What is the benefit of Industrial Standing Orders Act? Actually, any establishment having employed more than 100 employees, they have to prepare a certificate standing orders and they have to introduce it in consultation with the trade unions. But now that threshold of ceiling has been increased to 100 to 300. Now, what will be the result? The most of the industries, small industries, they are benefited out of this, because previously they have to approach the government and the authorities to get a certificate standing order if they are having employed 100 employees. Now the threshold has been increased to 300. So that is why most of the small scale industries need not prepare any standing orders, and straight away they can run the company without the standing order, and somewhat they are liberalized. The rule is liberalized. So that is the overall introduction to 3 acts and their importance. Now they were repealed and introduced as an IR code. We will see one by one what are the other terms and conditions and other sections introduced in each act. Workman replaced a worker. A term worker replaces the term workman under the ID Act. Actually, you can verify that the worker, workman, industry, and wages, and so many terms were introduced in many acts, and there were a lot of confusions. So that is why the government thought that the term worker can be workman under the ID Act. It is workman is replaced as a worker. So there is a clarity in this definition. Somewhat they want to reduce the multiplicity of the interpretations, and it is mentioned in various acts. So definition broadly similar to the act of workman under the ID Act. Workman includes an employee entirely engaged to work any manual, unskilled, skilled, technical, operational, clerical or supervisory work for higher reward, or but will not include employee engaged mainly in a managerial or administrative capacity. So this is the main change. Managerial and administrative capacity. These supervisory employees are not included in the term worker. So there is a ceiling. Now it is 10,000. IR code has increased the supervisory role monthly wage to 18,000. So there is an increase. So those who are receiving more than 18,000 will be under the supervisory category. They will not come under the term worker. Fixed term employment and fixed term employee. This is an important major change introduced by the IR code. Previously, there is a concept of permanent employment. After this introduction of the fixed term employment and fixed term employee, the employer is given free hand to appoint any employee, and he can be given 1 year employment on contract. If that employee is an underperformer, he need not extend his chain for another 1 year. So it is automatically the result will be hire and fire method. So fixed time employment is given free hand to the employer to engage any employee for a term and for a period of 1 year. If he is capable of convincing the employer, the terms can be extended further 1 year or 2 years like this. But the right of employment in a particular industry or particular establishment is taken away. So this is the major impact and changes introduced by this code. Fixed time employment will be allowed across all sectors. So previously it was not there, but after the liberalization policy, it was this labor code has given ample powers to the employers, and there is no protection to the employees. It is introduced in all sectors. A fixed time employment will have parity in terms of employment, working conditions, pay and social security benefits are applicable to permanent employee engaged in the same or similar work regardless of working for the qualifying period. Gratuity will be paid to fixed time employee who works for more than 1 year. This is also a major change. You may aware that Gratuity Act 1972, according to that act, if any employee wish to claim gratuity, they have to work minimum 5 years in that establishment continuously. That means continuous service for 5 year period. That concept has gone. Instead, in that place, the government has introduced gratuity will be paid to the fixed time employee who works for more than 1 year. On completion of an year, he can claim gratuity at a rate fixed by the government from time to time. The main implications would not arise when a worker's contract is on expiry. This is the major implication introduced by this Industrial Relations Code. So that is why I explained to you previously, this labor code has given ample powers to the employers and taken away the workers to seek permanent employment. Grievance redressal mechanism. In section 90C of the ID Act requires industrial establishment employing 20 or more permanent to constitute a grievance redressal committee. The ID Act also permits establishment to have their own grievance redressal mechanism. The IR code now requires the grievance redressal committee as per the specific format under the code. So that also made some changes. Actually, grievance procedure machinery under the ID Act was more favorable to the workman. Now it is not. We cannot say that it is not favorable to the workman. Instead of that, they have introduced in a specific format. So that also given more strength to the management and the companies, those who are appointing the grievance redressal committee as per the IR code.
Yeah, Dr. Mohammed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes,
okay,
sir.
Please go ahead.
1 minute. Yes. IR code. Next. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. 1 minute. Yeah. Government approval for closure, layoff, and retrenchment. Under the ID Act, a factory, mine, or plantation with 100 or more workmen require prior permission of the concerned government to close down and undertaking a layoff to retrench workmen. The IR code has increased this threshold for requirement of prior government approval to 300 or more workers. All the other requirements in relation to layoff, closure, retrenchment remain unchanged under the IR code for such entities. No change for IT sector in relation to closure, retrenchment or layoff. The present code laying down the conditions from the employer, those who are employing 100 or more workmen require permission. It is under the ID Act. Actually, it has been increased to 300 and more workers. So that is why small scale industries need not get any permission from the government authorities before layoff and closure and retrenchment. So that is the concession. This is a major boost to the industrialist, specifically small industrial establishments. This is a major change. So they need not approach the government for permission. So that is the major change introduced in this act. From 100 to 300 means most of the small scale industries are working below 300 employees. So they need not approach the government for any layoff or closure or retrenchment. So these are the new rules introduced in this act. Even before, the IT and ITS sectors, in relation to closure retrenchment, they are having already the government has given free hand to them, so they can do whatever they wish. They can do whatever they wish. So there is no further changes is introduced in this act. So that is why the government has given free hand to the industrialists. So this is a major change in this labor code in place of previous one. Standing orders for establishment with 300 plus workers. Actually, the Standing Orders Act 1946 insists the government they have to get a certified standing order from the authorities if they are having 100 or more workers. Now the threshold has been increased to 300 workers. The 300 workers or more to new required to prepare a standing order on matters listed Schedule 1 to IR Code relating to classification of workers, manner of informing workers about the work hours, holidays, pay days and wage rates, termination of the employment and grievance redressal mechanisms. This is an increase from the previous threshold of 100 workmen under the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act 1946. Threshold of applicability under the IESO Act varied from state to state based on the local amendments. Certain states had provided exemption from the applicability of the IESO Act to specific sectors, as seen in the exemption granted in Karnataka to IT and ITS establishments subject to the establishment fulfilling specific employment related to conditions. There is no clarity at this stage on state exemption to this requirement. So actually the code has been introduced, but because of the resistance and so many governments are reluctant to introduce this code so far, it has not been implemented in many states. There are resistance from the trade unions, state level as well as national level. There was a strike also. Still the objection is going on. But the government is not bothered about such objections and strikes and objection raised by the trade unions. Still they are going to implement this act and overcoming the resistance from the trade unions. So the standing orders for establishment with 300 and more workers, this also introduced to help the industrialists to given them free hand. So they need not approach the authorities for certificate standing orders. So that is why the matters are listed in the IR code. So threshold also increased from 100 to 300 workmen. So it is much helpful to them. So standing orders under the IR code will need certification by the labor authorities. That also only insisted, but provided if the employee establishment is more than 300 employees, then only it is mandatory. Strikes and lockouts. This is very important piece of IR code is introduced this important legislation and codified these strikes and lockouts. Already, strikes and lockouts are explained in the Industrial Dispute Act 1947, Section 22. Now, the Industrial Relations Code prevented entire strikes in entire establishments, all the establishments. Actually, previous Industrial Dispute Act 1947 prevented only strikes and lockout in the public utility services. Now, the IR code has given free hand to the authorities and it is prohibited strikes and lockout in all establishments. So that means here also they are taken away the trade union power as well as the management power also, but the most affected group is trade unions. Previously, they are having ample powers to give notice and commence a strike within a notice period after completion of the notice period. So 2 months notice period was there, and before the commencement of 14th, on completion of the 14th day, they can go for en masse strike. But that also prevented by this act. So to strike and lockouts is prohibited in all industrial establishment without notice and not is limited to public services. This provision related to notice requirement remained the same as under the ID Act. That is, I already explained about the 60 days notice and 14 days before the completion of 14th day, they could not go for a strike. So these are the conditions. The ID Act applied only to public utility services where there was the prohibition strikes and lockouts without notice. A unit could not go on strike in breach of contract without giving notice 60 days before the strike or within 14 days on giving such notice, or before the expiry of any day given notice for the strike. Similar notice period requirements were provided during conciliation proceedings or industrial tribunal proceedings. Provisions are provided in relation to the public utility service employer attempting to lock out a workman. So these are all far-reaching implications on the trade unions as well as the industrial climate and industrial peace. Now, the trade unions are already, their power has been declined. Their multiplicity of the trade unions is there. After the introduction of this new code, multiplicity of the trade unions is prevented. They have to get the recognition only if they are having 51% of the total employees. Then only they will get the recognition. Or there will be a major negotiation recognized by the management. So that also there, that also introduced in this code. So strikes and lockouts, previously they are having plenty of implications on the industrial setup and spoil the industrial relations. Now it comes to a standstill after the introduction of this code. Only we will come to know that after the implementation of this IR code, how this will affect the growth of industrial setup or whether it will support the industrial growth, whatever it is. So the government has introduced these sections and prohibiting strikes and lockout in all industries instead of public utility services. So this is a major change brought by the government after repealing the Industrial Dispute Act. Trade unions and negotiating unions. You are very well aware that most of the establishment they are having number of trade unions. They are mostly affiliated to trade unions in this national trade parties and state parties. They are having affiliations in each and every industry, one way or other way. Whenever the ruling is changed, they will change according to their wishes, and they are having number of trade unions function in the each and every industry. Moreover, the Trade Unions Act 1926 has given free hand to form a trade union. If any 7 workers are joined together, they can form a trade union, registered trade union, and even 50% of the trade union members can be from the outside. So that is why most of the trade unions are having president and vice presidents from their major trade unions, from political parties. They can appoint president and vice president from the political parties, those who are affiliated to them. Now, that is taken away by this act. Trade unions negotiation power has come down after this introduction of this act. If there is more than one registered trade union of workers functioning in an establishment, the trade union have more 51% of workers as members will be recognized as the sole negotiating union. This is the major change. In case no trade union is eligible as a sole negotiating union, a negotiating council will be formed consisting of representatives of the union that at least 20% of the workers as members. So this is the condition introduced by the government to reduce the multiplicity of the trade unions and reduce their bargaining power. So the main implication is they are losing their grip in the industries and industrial setup, and now they are losing their collective bargaining power. That is the major implication after the introduction of the new act. This restricts the negotiation capacity of workers as previously allowed under the Trade Union Act. Read with the state practice. Electronic filing. This is the major change. Previously, we had to file the returns in a prescribed format and approach the authorities once in 6 months and once every year. Now, the provision has been made to file electronic filings. So, this is also one of the new introduction of the new system. Dispute resolution streamline. The dispute resolution mechanism has been streamlined. I already explained about the grievance research procedure. It was incorporated in the Industrial Dispute Act, but now it has been abolished. Actually, there was an amendment during 2010 under grievance redressal machinery. A new chapter 11B has been substituted by the amendment 2010, whereby the present section 9C has been substituted. So redressal of grievances is an important thing. Somewhat they are giving an opportunity to employee to approach the management through this mechanism. After this introduction of this new code, certain courts like Board of Conciliation, Court of Inquiry, labor courts have been abolished. So I already explained about this. Because of the introduction of the new code, many of the statutory authorities like Board of Conciliation, Court of Inquiry and labor courts have been abolished, and industrial tribunals and national tribunals are retained. Section 43 and 44 of the IR Code now provide only for conciliation officers, industrial tribunals and national tribunals. So the conciliation officers are only the assistant labor officer and labor officer, assistant labor commissioner and labor commissioner. Likewise, they are the officers appointed under the government from time to time. So this is a major change. Actually, this will curtail the opportunity to the employee, those who are raising an industrial dispute and getting redressal of grievances through Board of Conciliation, Court of Inquiry and labor courts. This is the major change and introduced by this new act. So it is having its far-reaching implications because I already explained about the functioning of the tribunal. Tribunals they are adopting a go-slow method. It will take years to get a industrial dispute to settle the industrial dispute in tribunals because there may be frequent changes in the head of the tribunal according to the wish of the government, and so it will take years. So that is why if any aggrieved person approach the industrial tribunal, I don't think they will get a favorable verdict within a time period. So that is the major implication of abolishing Court of Inquiry and labor courts. increase in penalties. Penalties have been substantially increased under the IR code. Penalty for contravention of section 20.
Continue.
IR code has introduced penalties under the act. It is increased the amount of punishment. That means penalties introduced by this code. This has been raised to 2 lakh rupees instead of 100 rupees incorporated in the ID Act 1947. Because of the change of time, the government has prompted to increase the penalty to penalties. This increase has been somewhat to help the workers. Conditions present to retrench the workers, and under the ID Act, the code fines 2 lakhs, whereas under the ID Act, penalty was 100 Act. Compounding of penalty is now possible for first-time offences, subject to conditions. So these are all new introduction of few sections in this IR code. Exemption possible from applicability. The appropriate government is empowered to exempt any new industrial establishment or class of establishment from the IR code in public interest. So exemption can be applied from the time to time by the industrial establishment to the appropriate authorities. So these are all introduced by the new code. So the major implications will be, we can discuss the major implications after the introduction of this new code. Specifically, my view is strikes. There was a curtailment of strikes and lockouts, and reduction of multiplicity of trade unions, and abolition of many statutory authorities like work committee, conciliation officers, board of conciliation, court of inquiry, labor courts, etc. So these are all major changes introduced by new industrial relations. So I am concluding my presentation. Any questions can be asked in this matter. So I can have the podium to Sada sir.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Suleiman. Very nicely
Yes,
presented in a very comprehensive manner the IR code, and a lot of good points to come from this, and lot of contentious points also. So I think we'll continue with Mr. Bhushan Bhatia's presentation and talk on the other codes, and thereafter we can discuss amongst ourselves also, and if there are other questions we can take it an end towards the end. So welcome Bhatia sir once again, and the podium is all yours now.
Thank you, Dr. Chadha, Dr. Suleiman, and all the audience, esteemed audience, who are all, most of them I can see in all the programs, and really their contribution is very, very valuable. And today's presentation by Dr. Muhammad Suleiman, it was very elaborative, and the background given by Dr. Chadha is also very useful for the listeners. Actually, we have grown up seeing all these things since generations together, all old acts and everything. It was continuing for years together. And the most important thing that the labor is motivated by the wages. Of course, other terms and conditions are very important, but yes, the wages is the most motivating factor for the labor. And now with the changed scenario, when there is a demand for FDI also, means government has given so many plans for FDI. Side by side, the ease of doing business, your concept of your Make India concept, all these things they need some changes in the existing laws which were already operating. Because here there should be a win-win situation that employer is happy and worker is happy. When both of them are happy, definitely the productivity will increase. The employer will be benefited due to the quality production, more production, and particularly means hindrance-free production. And worker will be happy that the employer is taking care of all of the basic requirements for the workers. So these codes sum up all old acts, and only 4 codes have come. So I am particularly now I'll be presenting the Code on Wages 2019, and it was notified on 8th of August 2019. Actually, 4 very important acts means Payment of Wages Act 1936, Minimum Wages Act 1948, Payment of Bonus Act 1965, and the Equal Remuneration Act 1976. They have been amalgamated. Let me share my screen also. I don't know.
Camera off பண்றாரு.
இல்ல இல்ல
Mic off பண்றாரு.
இது பேசுறது நீங்க
Mic off பண்றாரு.
வேண்டாம்.
So, hope my screen is visible. Doctor, is it?
Yes, Bhatia sir, your screen is visible, please. Please go ahead.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Now, the 4 major acts means Payment of Wages Act, Minimum Wages Act, Payment of Bonus Act, and Equal Remuneration Act. These have been amalgamated to form this code, and the name of this code is the Code of Wages 2019. When it is a Code of Wages, first of all, we must know what are the wages. Actually, in legal system also, there is a dispute. Even Supreme Court has given many judgments on this, that what the wages comprise of. Because a few facilities, concessions, or you can say a few things like bonus and gratuity, these are linked to wages. So till we define what wages is, we won't be able to come to the exact conclusion that what this act says. So basically, they include only 2 things. First of all, basic pay and DA. It is in government departments, basic pay and DA, they form the wages. But in private sector, there is one more thing, is retaining allowance. Retaining allowance is an allowance given to an employee that he is a useful employee for the company, and they don't want him to go, and he will tell that I am leaving, I am going to some other organization. They'll say, okay, we will give you 500 or 5,000 extra, and this will be your retaining allowance. So this will also be part of the wages. So wages basically include basic pay and DA, and like this retaining allowances. But the other allowances which are given by the employers, these do not include in wages, like your HRA, special this transport allowance, or any remuneration payable to you as an award, or bonus which is payable under the law, or house accommodation which is given, or overtime which is given. All these things don't include in the basic pay. Because this wages, because why they have defined wages, there is a reason for that. Why they have defined wages? Because a few things like bonus payable, it depends upon the wages. Similarly, your gratuity, it is also drawn from the wages. Though in this Gratuity Act, it clearly tells that yes, it is payable on the wages. But in banking system, I have gone through that again the companies, the banks, their regulations, they have defined whether what part will be covered in for calculation of gratuity. So in banking system, for workmen who are in clerical level, their basic pay and DA is included. but for the officer, DA is not included. So they have defined through regulations. But here in this act, they have clearly mentioned that basic pay, dearness allowance, and retaining allowance. These three form the part of wages, and remaining all other allowances, etc., they don't form the part of the wages. Now I'm coming to the important features. Okay, what are the important features of the this code? First of all, they have made it very easy for the employers, because the employer had to keep another employee just to maintain the registers. And in most of the times, those registers were maintained at the year end when those were to be produced before the concerned authority. So they were not keeping any meaning. There was not any useful purpose for that, because registers were not maintained on day-to-day basis. Only that was a formality. Now the government has said that you have to maintain only 2 registers, and only 1 return has to be filed. Earlier there were 4 returns, there were around 10 registers, but now it has been reduced to 2 only. So it is easy for the employers to keep the registers, update from time to time, and keep track with the system that exactly if it is required to be completed today, it should be completed today. And moreover, these registers are not being produced in physical form. They have allowed that they can be filed or shown. The statement return is to be filed only electronically. And the inspectors also can visit, can see this record, this electronically. They may come, they may visit, but yes, there is some relief from the Inspector Raj. Actually, in India, what the foreign investors believe, because I was also in banking sector and particularly in top management, and when I was abroad, I had to see all these things, that how we are different from other countries. So the people were saying that there are so many regulations in India, so many regulations in India. And earlier, when in 1999, means it was implemented from 2000, FEMA was introduced, Foreign Exchange Management Act it was. At that time, it was that earlier it was FERA. It was introduced in 1973. So the name of FERA are included for regulations. So we had to change the name because it contained the word regulations. So it's similarly, coming back to my topic, that Inspector Raj is a word which is very common among the industrialists, and they are fed up with this. Now, under this code, what has been done, that inspectors are not only inspecting the books, they are facilitators also. They are working as a facilitator between the earlier inspector was going to the industry. He was checking the documents, he was checking the environment and giving his report. Now, if there is some problem, he'll intervene and he will sit, between the two, he'll try to reconcile the things between them. He'll be working as if it is done in conciliation process. So this is the difference. Then, as I have already told you, faceless interaction means it is just calling of information. It can go electronically also. Then there are earlier under labor laws, all offences were it is as a criminal. The person was treated as a criminal, that if he has done something, police action will be there or something. Now it is decriminalization of offences, that they have just fixed some fines or anything, and on repeated offences, there is a again provision of strict action. But yes, for first time offender or second time offender, they are very you can say mild things, and you can say some fines are there. But they have increased the fines. It is not that they have given relief to the employers, but that way they have increased the fines also. Now the fines are 10,000 to 50,000 instead. Now the things have come as if an industry is just like in company law. In company law, there is compounding of offenses. Compounding of offenses mean that if there is some offense, you can pay some fine and you can be discharged. So here also, pay fine and be excused. But it is not available for second similar violation in next 5 years. It is not that every time you pay fine and you are excused. No, you are excused once only. But for next time, if you do it, definitely you have to face the music. One most important thing, my friends, this is most important thing. Earlier what happened, some of the companies, because many things are connected to wages, they were fixing CTC in this way that most of the wages or the money they were paying in the shape of remuneration, it was not the part of wages. So suppose there is total salary of 80,000, there used to be only 30,000 in the shape of wages, rest in the shape of allowances. Why it was so? Because they were making savings in the shape of, number one, the people who are getting bonus, they won't be getting more bonus because it is on wages only. The people who for this employees provident fund, the employer portion of provident fund, they have to deposit. That is also done on basic pay. So this now they have said that allowances in excess of 50% of wages. Suppose the wages are 30,000. Okay, so 50% of those wages will be 15,000. So total 45. If the total allowances are more than that, that will be considered as a part of wages. So this is something very, very important, that now the employers cannot fix the wages like this, that allowances, more or more allowances are there on which they don't have to pay pension even. In banking sector also, I tell you, during last, it was not there earlier. But there was an agreement in 2012 where they said instead of increasing basic pay, they fixed some allowance around 8,000 to 10,000 depending upon different scales. Now that amount, that allowance does not qualify even for pension, does not qualify for DA and all other things. So in view of all these things, in this code, it has been embedded that you can fix whatever you like. It is your choice. We won't stop you. But the allowances in excess of 50% of wages, they will be considered as part of wages. And you will have to give all the benefits which are given and which are linked to wages. I hope I am clear in this aspect. Hello? 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 I am not.
Yes, Bhatia sir.
I am not getting any feedback or voice something, so I am not able to understand whether I am properly visible or not, or properly audible or not.
No, it's visible, and your voice is also okay. Please go ahead. We are listening to you.
Okay, fine.
Because questions will, in any case, take at the end.
No question at all. But yes, I wanted to have this feedback that I am audible or something.
Yes.
So, and another thing, what they have done, that full and final settlements to be made within 2 days of termination or resignation. Earlier it was for months together, years together, they were not paid. Now it is mandatory that if the job is terminated or if the employee resigns, the wages full and final settlement is to be made within 2 days of that. Then claims by employees, there is a limitation period. It is general limitation period also. Limitation period is extended to 3 years. Earlier it was 2 years. Now it has been extended to 3 years. And in case some employee says that I have not been given the proper remuneration or my payments, it is incumbent upon the employer to prove that they have made timely payment. It is incumbent upon the employer to prove. Otherwise also, logically also it is, because if one side raises a question, another side has to justify that yes, there is no wrong in it, I have done as per the system. So here also. and records relating to these are to be preserved at least for 3 years. Now I am coming. These were some major factors which I wanted to discuss in advance. Now I am coming to some other important features which are in this act. So this part I have already covered. That definition of wages they have given, and particularly they have specified what covers under wages and what is not covered under wages. So the provisions relating to wages, it should be applicable to all employments. It is under organized sector or unorganized sector. Earlier, the unorganized sector, it was suffering from so many issues, but there was no set law for them. Now they have connected that whether it is organized or unorganized sector, both way it is applicable. And government, central government as well as state governments, they have been vested with the rights to fix minimum wages. Because why they have vested the rights with state governments? Because some of the industries are state specific, some of the industries are area specific, and in that system, if central government fixes everything, so there were some issues that they said that the people who are sitting in the state, they know more about the workers in that area. So they have authorized the state governments also to fix minimum wages. So in some aspects it will be fixed by central government, and in some of the aspects even state governments can fix. State-wise can also be there. And side by side depends upon the to some extent the you can say the financial status of the state also. Some states are very poor, and in case they have to pay through the states, or some industries are also not working well, very high wages are fixed at national level, so those won't survive at all. This is also one of the questions. So yes, the same thing I have covered, that yes, the factors shall be determined, taken into account the skills required, ordinance of the work assigned, geographical location of the workplace. All these things are required. Here is one provision relating to timely payment of wages and authorized reduction from wages, which are presently applicable only in respect of employees drawing wages of 24,000 rupees per month. It shall be made applicable to all employees irrespective of wage ceiling. Means timely payment is to be made. Earlier it was that the people who are getting up to 24,000, you have to make timely payment. For others, you can do that. Okay, you can say that today we are short of funds, and it can be done next month also. Now they said no, wages are to be given, timely payment is to be done irrespective of the ceiling of wages. So earlier almost cash was given. Now it is up to the choice of both the parties, that in case they want in cash, they can have the in case cash, and in case they want to check or digital payment they want, it can be done. Now the government has given a clear-cut mandate in the act itself. Earlier there were some disputes. The employers were saying, no, I will give him check. He said, no, I don't want to have check. I want cash only. Now they have given the option that yes, it can be paid digitally also. Because after opening of accounts of almost all the workers in the banking system, so it has been made easier, and it is easier for the employer also, that at one click he can transfer the wages of all the employees working under him. This part, G part, I have already covered, that minimum wages can be fixed by any government. And the role of inspectors and facilitators I have already explained also. Because here what happened, earlier Inspector Raj was very, very difficult. He was like a thanedar with a danda in his hand, and when he was coming, industrialist was bound to think that how to get rid of him. Now it is not so. The inspector will be working like a facilitator, and many times the industry will try to take his services that please this is the point of difference and kindly help us and kindly try to be a mediator also. And then he is working as a facilitator, as a mediator, definitely the things will be more easier. Then yes, it empowers the appropriate government to determine the ceiling of wage limit for the purpose of eligibility of bonus. It is already done. Earlier also it is done. The governments are fixing that sometimes it was 7,500, then it was risen to 15,000. Now it is around, I don't know the exact limit, is around 24,000. Beyond that, bonus is not given. But yes, the government is empowered to fix, because keeping in view the price index and the wages to be given. Because earlier when it was 7,500, today it should be more than 50,000 for that. Means if we compare that period and today's period, for payment of bonus when it was 7,500, if we compare with today's price index, so it will be around 50,000. So the people who are getting 50,000, they are entitled for bonus. So the government keeps on upgrading the limit from time to time. Then there were multiple authorities at multiple level to hear and decide the claims. Means there was ELCs and other authorities who were deciding the claims. Now it empowers appropriate government to appoint one or more authorities just to listen these education. Just going to other side, education tribunals. What is this? That for education departments, they are fixed that all dispute relating to them, those will be listened at one point. Now there is CAT, this state government, this tribunal is also coming to Panchkula. Earlier it was fixed for this, it was decided for Karnal. Now it is coming to Panchkula, where the cases relating to our state government employees will be heard or listened. So similarly for settlement of claims, the governments will decide even which authority will be there, who will be the local. Even gratuity, for gratuity they have fixed one authority. So like from they are trying to reduce the burden from courts, because earlier everything was decided through courts. Now they are giving semi-judicial powers to these authorities, and they are deciding. Thereafter, yes, the person is open to court. It is not so that if it is decided in any tribunal, he cannot go to court. Because writ this article 2 to 6 and 7, it is open to all, that any place, any person who is aggrieved and there is no scope of appeal or who cannot go anywhere, he can go to Honorable High Court and file a writ. Means under Article 2 to 6 and 2 to 7 of the Constitution of India. So after that also they are open to that. It is not that they cannot go. But yes, just to reduce the burden on the courts and just to fasten the things. And the people are expert in that line also, because they are dealing with only that issue only. So that way they have given the power to the government to decide some authorities. Then appellate authority also, because wherever there is an authority to decide something, there should be, it is requirement of time that appellate authority should be there. So both are interconnected. So all these things, they have that it provides appointment of officer not below the rank of Under Secretary to the Government of India and an officer of equivalent level in the state government to dispose of the cases punishable under only with fine up to 50,000. Means earlier all these powers were with the court only. Now they have given the power to people other than court also. And maybe these people, it is not necessary that these people are on legal side. Means any person who is at the position of Under Secretary or similar position in state government, he can be appointed to decide the cases, dispose of the cases, punishable only up to fine up to 50,000. So at least, because most of the cases will come under this. So again, the burden shifts from courts to some other officer who will be doing this thing only. And again, compounding of offences. This is something very, very useful and giving relief to the employers. Earlier, for any offence, under Industrial Dispute Act or Payment of Wages Act, there was a sword upon the employer that I may be imprisoned and like. Now there is a compounding effect. That even in this check bouncing cases under 138 of Negotiable Instruments Act, there is also compounding offense. That yes, you have done something. If you have not done any murder, that which cannot be compounded. Something has been done. If it is corrected with some fine, okay, fine. But it is not that you pay the fine and you are discharged from the liability. You will have to comply what was required. This fine is only for your this delayed part or non-compliance on time. It doesn't mean that you need not comply. You have to comply, but yes, instead of imprisonment or punishment, you will be fined. But it will not be repeated for the second. It is once only. If within 5 years you have repeated it, then definitely you have to undergo all those provisions under which you can be punished. It provides where a claim has been filed for non-payment of remuneration or bonus or less payment of bonus or on account of making deduction not authorized by legislation, the burden shall be on the employer to prove. This thing I have already covered. That if, because most of the time such cases are there, that he was earlier, actually as per law, what is there? That only the petitioner has to prove his case. The law what says, the prosecutor or the petitioner, he has to prove his case that I am entitled for this. Of course, defense is there, other side. But here, it is the employer who has to prove. If he says payment has not been made to me, he has to prove that payment has been made. Nobody will ask him to prove that it has not been made to you. Of course, this was earlier also, but now they have minuted everything and this. So there is an advisory board also. Earlier advisory board was not there, only the government was there doing. Now there is an advisory board which will keep on advising them on important issues like on wages or women employment or other social issues. So this advisory board at central and state level, they will be just very useful for the purpose. The time they have fixed the time also for settlement of claims. It is not so that any claim which should continue 4 years together. But earlier the time was very little, 6 to 2 years. But now it has gone up to 3 years from both the sides. That it can be settled within 3 years. But yes, if it is on later side, they will have to pay interest and other charges also. So this is something relating to payment of the Code of Wages 2019. And to sum up, if we are coming to sum up all these things, so they have made the things easier for the employers as well as the employees. Now the employer can work with more freedom because the employer is afraid of something, that he is investing money. Every employer does not have his own funds. Most of the employers, they are raising funds from the banks and other institutions. And they set up the industry, and thereafter they fall in the vicious cycle of these acts on. Because as Dr. Suleiman also told earlier, Dr. Chadha was also discussing, many of the strikes, those strikes were totally illegal and they had far-reaching adverse impact on the workers. So the government has tried to check all these things. And the beauty of the things is that all these 4 codes, they carry approval of all parties. Means they have been discussed with all parties. There is no dispute among any of the parties, opposition or any member parliament about this. You might have any of us might not have heard of any difference among them. So the things which have done with consent of all the parties, definitely they have the beauty of things that the interest of all categories, all classes has been taken care of. So I won't take much time. Thank you all for listening me so patiently. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhatia Saab. Uh, Thanks a lot. This was quite an elaborate presentation. I'll request you to unshare the presentation. So you've talked about the minimum wages. You've talked about how the law has been made simple and more user friendly, wherein it is really easy for the industries to comply with the law, and then there are penalties also if they do not comply, and the role of inspector has been reduced as such to a facilitator rather than a boss over the industries. So somehow with this it seems with both the acts, Industrial Relations Act and the Wages Act, and apart from that the Social Security Act and the Health Act, the idea is that that Inspector Raj is reduced, the industry gets more confident to bring about investments, because at the end of the day the capitalist has to come out with investments and to bring out machinery and to invest everything. If the capitalist is not sure that what will happen to its investment tomorrow, then why will he invest? He is investing for profits. Let's be very clear on this. And then once he invests, then all stakeholders are benefited, including the workers, the government, and even the unorganized sector also. Even once a factory comes up, then everybody is benefited. Take the case of Singur, wherein Tata had set up the plant for Tata Nano in Singur in West Bengal, and the labor unrest came around, and they had to shift, and the political also there was problems, and they shifted from therein to Gujarat. So it was a loss I suppose it was a big loss to West Bengal, and a big benefit to the Gujarat government, because the factory is working, it is bringing about products, and then this is being sold, and then everybody is benefiting apart from the employees, the government, and all aspects. So I think the laws have come up, and the two panelists have talked about the various aspects of industrial relations and the Wages Act also, and add to it the social security which has been provided, and the 9 laws have been subsumed to come out with social security act, the code, which talks about providing the employee provident fund. It talks about the insurance, it talks about maternity benefits, it talks about employee deposit linked insurance, it talks about accidents if happen, what needs to be done, and then there are provisions wherein if those are not being fulfilled, there are penalties. And the idea is that it should be simple to follow, it should be known to all the stakeholders, and there the use of IT Aadhaar card for the wages also and for all benefits also, it helps. And the onus then lies on the employer to prove that he has given the benefits to the other party. And if they do not are on the same page, then there are conciliation officers like arbitrators who will reconcile both the parties. So generally the striking of work lockdown is not beneficial to any party, but yes, the employer should also not consider themselves to be very much superior, because it's a complementary and a supplementary kind of a relationship. So both have to work hand in hand with each other, and the government's hand should be minimum, so that the employer feels that they can always bring about the capital, bring about factories, and they can always start. So with this happening, ease of doing business will come up, and we'll have the investments not only from Indian entrepreneurs but also from the foreign entrepreneurs. The FDI will also come up. This we had also talked about. Now, if there are any questions that is therein, so I think maybe 5 minutes or so we can take for the questions. So if you have any question, you can post it on the website also to the Dr. Saibi has raised a hand. Yeah, Dr. Saibi, you can ask your question.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to appreciate the wonderful presentation made by Dr. Bhushan Bhatia and Dr. Mohammad Sulaiman. It's a wonderful interaction, and they have deliberated on the issues regarding various laws, labor laws, like Industrial Dispute Act, Minimum Wages Act, and other code also, which has come into force or likely to be in force in the near future. Wonderful presentation, all appreciation. But I have some queries. So I am a forest officer, and we have been dealing with the labor. And I remain in PWD also. We have been dealing with the labor like construction work, road constructions, and afforestation, then soil conservation. Then we employ labor for forest exploitation, that is conversion of timber into scants. So there's, I think, more than 12,000 people who are working as a labor, maybe a skilled labor or unskilled labor.
ये दरवाजा बंद कर लो कविता, आवाज नीचे रखो और दरवाजा बंद कर लो.
What I wanted to drive you at is, you might have seen, ladies especially, they are carrying bricks on their head and a baby in their lap. See, it ethically, does it sound good? For me, it is not. Is there any provision in the law that employee should ensure that there is a way to keep the baby somewhere so that the baby is not harmed and woman also works with gracefully? Ultimately, she has to earn the wages. So, what the law says in this regard. Secondly, over a year of time, I have realized the equal wages are not paid to the women especially. If you think about Madhya Pradesh, I have a case study. In Madhya Pradesh, tendul leaves are collected by laborers, and there are such paper also which I have gone through. The female, they are not given the wages at par with the male counter. Why it is so, and what who is there to check it, and why it is not being done since time immemorial is going on. Then see, sustainable employment, that is again a question. I have seen the people working in the construction area, and there are contractors who bring from other states. They work continuously, and once the work is finished, the entire lot is taken to some other work, or if there is no work, they are waiting for the work at home. Is there any provision in so many acts on the code which we have narrated? I mean, the honorable speakers, would you please elaborate on the issue that sustainable employment can be ensured in this act or not? I mean, the ethics which are required to be prevailed among the labor. Is there any embargo or the responsibility of the employee to look after that aspect? So these are some of the issues which I would like to flag and like to have some elaboration from you. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Dr. Saibi. So I think a very good observation you raised. So I think there are two issues out here. One is the benefits that could be provided to a female employee because if she is bringing her kids along, what could be the facilities and benefits that could be provided so that she can work in peace. That is number one. And secondly, it is about equal pay for equal work. And thirdly, you talked about how sustainable employment can be provided. So I think who will take the call? Bhatia sir, will you start, and then maybe Dr. Mohammad Suleiman can go ahead, or it could be vice versa also.
In case doctor wants, we can. Otherwise,
I can reply this.
Okay. So Dr. Mohammad Suleiman, you may start, and Dr. Bhatia will supplement.
Regarding the working employees, specifically women, already they are having a maternity benefits act. It has given 1 year leave for a newborn child to take care of their child. So first facility is there. So 1 year she can take leave with wages under the Maternity Benefits Act. After that, she can take care of her child through crunch. If any employer employed more than 50 women, so they have to arrange a crunch facility for taking care of the child of the working woman. So that facility is already provided and incorporated in all acts, specifically in Factories Act, and the new codes also, Industrial social security codes also, this provision has been incorporated. Regarding the contract labor, already there is a Contract Labor Act, and it is preventing exploitation of the labor by the employers. For organized sector and unorganized sector, there are separate provisions. The new code has already covered the. This is the new introduction of this is the new coverage of unorganized employees from the unorganized sector and migrant workers. That also covered by the new code. So after the implementation only we can come to know that whether it is useful or beneficial to the workers or not. So that also their provisions are already provided by the government. They are also covered. Regarding the sustainability of the employment, actually after the implementation of this new codes, we cannot say that, because they have introduced a new section in IR code, that is terms of contract. It is like a contract system, because the new code insists the employer has to give a letter, that is just a minute please. This code, Industrial Relations Code, insists the employer has to fix a term employment. Fixed time employment. That means if any employee gets a letter from an employer, it will go only 1 to 1 year. If that employee is capable or is talented, his service will be engaged for another 1 year. So that is called fixed time employment. So there is no sustainability of the employment in any industry. If this employee is capable and talented, he can be retained. Otherwise, we cannot say that the term of the employment will be extended further. So there is no question of sustainability. So that is it is my reading. So anyhow, remaining things can be explained by the Advocate Bhatia sir. If any disagreement.
Thanks, Dr. Suleiman.
Yes,
actually, it is very difficult to bat after Sachin Tendulkar has batted. So, my observations here are that earlier the trade unions or the relation between employer and employee was exactly like as it was shown on the movies. Most of us, maybe all of us, have seen Diwar movie. And in the beginning, how they were blackmailing his father and how he was forced to sign. So this was going on. And this is the ground reality at that time. Now the employers and employees both have realized that we have to behave in case we want to grow. So the relationship has now come from that Diwar to our Tatas. You know, all of us know has never been a strike in Tatas, whereas so many people are working there. Why it is so? Because there is a regular dialogue between employers and employees. Even the highest ranked officers, they are visiting the laborers, listen to them, try to solve their genuine problems. Okay, as far as this baby care is concerned, when I was working as chief manager, one of my clients was a brick kiln owner. And once I visited that kiln just to see what is going on, so I could see exactly the same situation, that a lady was carrying bricks and baby on her back and like this. I talked to him that in case you do one thing, you spend at that time it was maximum 3,000 a month. 3,000 a month, and you put one cradle here and one small girl or one lady to look after the children. Maybe there are 15, 20 such employees, and she looks after the children only, and she feeds them on time. You will see that amount will be saved in the shape of more productivity, because they are spending, when the child is weeping, she will attend the child. When child wants food, she will feed them also. And in case that extra employees there who are looking after children only, then your productivity will increase and that will cover the amount you are spending on them. And he understood and he followed it. And one day he told me that, yes, Mr. Bhatia, you told me something which was very practical. One has to be practical because laws are there, everything is there, but still till today the things are going on. And he is very, very right in saying, Dr. Saibi, that equal wages to women is not given. Even if we employ one labor at our home, daily wage at our home, they will tell, yes, for this male it is 500, for female it is 400. Why for female it is 400? She'll be working from 8 to 5. That person will also be working from 8 to 5. Why lesser wages for her? So this is a conceptual, you can say, unclarity, which definitely has to be clear. Has to be clear. And this will come through ethics. Of course, the laws are there. But if the law, nobody follows the law both ways. If they violate, you can violate the law, maybe on labor side, maybe on management side. You cannot fight every day. So there should be a continuous dialogue between the employer and the worker. And the people like Dr. Chadda, Dr. Saibi, Dr. Mohammed Suleiman, they should invite them here, there, sometimes, just to for a just talk, promote such a talk, inspirational talk or something, which will be helpful to all of them. Because training or seminar like that.
Yeah, and for your information, sorry for interruption. For your information, in Kerala, for unorganized sectors, the men, that is, they are getting 900 rupees. For ladies, they are getting 700 rupees. In unorganized sector, in organized sector, it is high. So somewhat, that is why most of the migrant workers from other states are rushing to Kerala. Around more than 60 lakhs migrant workers are available in Kerala now. They are only working. Our people are not working. Keralites they are moving towards Gulf, South African countries. They are seeking employment in other countries. So this is happening now. Without migrant worker, Kerala cannot work. Go forward. Most of the industries, everywhere they are only working. Because they are getting higher.
They are getting 700 for their work and 200 for making you people comfortable. So that's why the wages are here.
No, that is not the case. We have to give it.
Yes. So this is the aspect. And one more, ethics among the employees. This is very important issue raised by Dr. Saibi. And again, the ethics will come when we lead by example. Because
but in some industries, still in this exploitation is going on. In other states, exploitation is going on.
In case we are governing through by ethics, the worker will learn to some extent. But if we don't have as employers, we don't have the ethics, so how can we expect our workers to do that? Yes, there are some trade unions, some people are, because the people, some who want to be leaders ever, they misguide them, because they listen to them, they listen less to the management. Yeah, that is there. But yes, now the time has come when the people can be contacted through more than one ways. Because earlier the employer, if he had to contact labor, he'll have to go physically or he'll have to send somebody. And the people will stop them in between. They won't allow the person to reach there. Now the things are not there. Through media, otherwise you can contact them. And you can tell them your real intentions behind that. That's real. We are for you. We want to help you. Definitely. And we have to grow together. So the things will improve.
Yeah. Correct.
Thank you, Dr. Suleiman and Bhatia Sahab, for answering the queries and observations of Dr. Saibi. So if there's any other question, we can take one more question because we are already running short of time. We have overshot our time as always. If there is any query, you may please raise your hand and then come up. You can also post the query in the chat box. I can read it for you. Any query, please? Dr. Saibi has again raised the hand. Dr. Saibi, you want to ask and or to
Yeah, just
yeah.
one thing.
Please
one
go
thing
ahead.
more, which I need a little clarification. Generally, it is the setup. I mean, it is the employer who decides for a work what should be its strength, how much manpower he requires for carrying out his work and output of the industry or the project. Uh, but usually it has been seen that he employs much less than what is required, and he tries to take out the extra work within that specified time from the employee he gets into his factory or his operation site. So, what is the role of the regulator here in these acts and the code? Just I wanted to know it.
Okay. Can I
Dr. Suleiman, would you like to answer?
Yeah. Actually, till this day, there are a number of acts insisting the employer to introduce certain working conditions for doing a job in any industry. So that also there under the Factories Act and Industrial Dispute Act and everything. Number of authorities are there, factories inspectors are there. And according to the Standing Orders Act, the Standing Orders Act insists working hours and what are the conditions to be provided for executing the work, and likewise. It depends, it varies from industries to industry because you cannot compare with one industry to another industry. For example, if it is a industry, it is coming under the Wage Board Act, Cement Wage Board. So they are introducing number of designations that are ordinary worker, then masons, masons, then HEO, heavy equipment operator, likewise. In that setup, that is Cement Wage Board Award, specifically mentioned the office staff as well as the working class, likewise, two categories. So there is a authority, that is supervisory cadre is there. They are called assistant foreman, senior foreman, likewise. They are only supervising the lower level staffs. So they are only giving execution of the work and how much time they have to take the completion of the work and everything. So that also there specifically, there is a clear-cut instructions are there from time to time. That is called Standing Orders Act insisted this. Likewise, they cannot, if any worker works more than his fixed time, that is 8 hours, the employer has to give overtime, that is double of the wages. So that benefit is to be given after completion of the 8 hours. In the meantime, they have to give half an hour for taking food, that is interval, regular interval. They have to provide water and all other facilities. So these are the facilities provided and insisted by the factories and standing. So the employer cannot exploit or exploit the employee for many hours. So based on this only they can execute the work. Then in any industry, there may be a foreman in each section. They are only executing the work. That is the supervisory staff. To supervise them, that is a middle management level, engineers, officers, and all there. So in any industry, there are 3 types of setups there to execute any work. So that is why there are systems are there and complete modifications are there. So this is the one thing. And next one, what is the question, sir, you have asked? Any code of ethics?
I think
Code of ethics. So all the establishments are working under certain statutory rules only. So that is why they have to frame code of ethics. They have to comply it. That is why it is called work culture. Dr. Bhatia Sagar already explained about the work culture adopted by the Tatas. So that is why there is no strike in Tatas. They are supporting the people. They are helping the workers. They are giving free hand to them. So that is why there is no conflict and unrest in industrial establishment of the Tatas. Now the Ambani is also introducing so many systems, even though they are having more than that of Tata, but still they are managing and everything. So code of ethics is there in all and establishment. But only things after the changes made in the IR code, the concept of permanent employment has gone. That is the major change. And trade unions also losing their power. Their bargaining power has lost because they have exploited the workers for years. But now it is not possible. The multiplicity has come down. So these are all the things. But nowadays, the employees are given free hand. They can appoint any person. They can fire and hire. This method is given free hand to the industrial establishment. So that is the major change after this introduction of 4 codes. This is my observation.
Right. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Suleiman. Very succinctly done and very elaborate and comprehensive in answering the question. And thank you, Dr. Saibi, for raising very pertinent questions and queries, which has brought about so much light on the topic. So, friends, we come to an end of this wonderful webinar. The topic suggested by Dr. Suleiman, and then I'm really thankful to Dr. Bhatia also for agreeing to be a part of this topic, and in a very short period of time he prepared. And thanks to both of you for coming out with such good and comprehensive presentations on the subject. And this made me read also. I was taken back to my MBA years when I had read all this, and over the time period I not dealing it, I'm more into finance, but then because I have to speak and then to do some homework on this count. So thanks to both of you. I think the government has done that way a good task of restructuring the entire laws and regulations into certain codes, which will reduce the multiplicity of the law rules, and it also hopes to increase the ease of doing business, give more leeway to the capitalist and to the industrialists, both Indian as well as foreign, to come up and set up industries out there. Because at the end of the day, if there is industrialization, then there will be employment. If there is employment, the GDP will automatically grow. So this is very important. I think that is the crux what the government is thinking about. But yes, maybe many governments state there are certain state laws also, how they'll be implementing it. Again, it's a question mark. It will be just like K Sara Sara, whatever will be. But I think the intention that way is good. But what both the panelists have talked about is, even without all these codes, even without all these things, if both the parties, the stakeholders, the employer and employees, they both are at the same page, that our interest is to make the industry grow, to make our unit grow, to make our factory grow and come up in terms of competition. Because today there is a lot of competition that is happening. And competition is not only internal competition, the competition is world and global competition. The China is at your neck, Taiwan is at your neck, Malaysia is at your neck. So if you do not produce quality products at a low price, at a price which is competitive, the factories, both products and services, will be going out of business. So I think that is a step that the government has taken, so that the ease of doing business is also there, ease of starting business is also there, and employment generation is there. But yes, as rightly pointed by Dr. Mohammad Suleiman, that the bargaining power of the unions have been reduced, but I think this has been compensated by less Inspector Raj and more of a facilitator. So what government actually would be more of a facilitator rather than a regulator, and makes sure that the thing does not happen only on paper, as we have in the Indian context, that it is on paper and actual ground is something else. But then the challenge then there will be the implementation of this right spirit that the government has come up, so that both the employer and employees are happy and they can work in a collaborative framework within each other. So with these words, we come towards an end of this wonderful webinar. Great topic. I really thank the two panelists, Mr. Bhushan Bhatia and Dr. Mohammad Suleiman, I also thank all the wonderful participants who join us day in day out since this last 58 Sundays. I thank Dr. Sahibi, who has raised very good queries. I thank the IHRDI team comprising Sanya, Jeet Kumar Gupta ji, Manoj Tiotia ji, Dr. Sahibi, Dr. S.K. Sharma, who has been silent since last 3-4 weeks, but he has joined. Maybe he is busy in some other activities alongside. So I really thank all of you. Just a notification that the e-certificate and the recording will be available. The link and issue has been shared with you. If you have filled it, that is fine. Otherwise, you can just ping me on 8727857116. I repeat, 8727857116, and we'll send you the feedback form also. And thereafter, in a day or two, we'll send you the recording also. So friends, till the time we meet next Sunday on a wonderful topic, another burning topic, till that time, take good care of yourself, be safe. The third variant is already on, and searching for some good and easy prey. So take care of yourself, your family, especially your kids. Be vaccinated and enjoy whatever has been left of the Sunday today. So friends, thank you so much, and goodbye, sayonara, namaskar.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you all.